There are many ways we can start to conclude, and we should also try to move into that final part. I can maybe do a crossover here to the concluding session by telling you what I have found quite interesting here when listening to you is that I mean the role of national authorities is for sure changing here. How can you have objectives, the greater goals from above of sustainability, climate change, etc., resilience, all that? How can you make other people do what you would like them to do without forcing them to do it? That's a key issue here. And yes, that's through collaboration, coordination between the parties themselves, and facilitating them to do so, empowering them to do so, pointing towards cross-fertilization aspects of, and where they might actually have mutual benefits as well. It's a very complex process, and also those kind of processes, we know that from governance studies, that you enter into new kinds of fragmentation. It becomes hard to coordinate in a terrain where all the actors are horizontally positioned, of course. But maybe I can give you an example here that I noticed myself from the Danish context, where these non-mandatory, voluntary, cross-municipal collaborations actually end up having an impact on mandatory planning, because a few years ago, as Jahn also mentioned, the planning legislation was changed, and it resulted in two new planning directives, national planning directives, where second homes were areas for that were appointed. But in order to get that appointed from the state, the municipalities had to send in proposals for this. And actually, in order to get through, they had, I could see from those who actually succeeded, that the national level put weight to municipalities that had managed to argue from these non-mandatory strategies produced. For instance, along the west coast of Denmark, there's been a partnership between many municipalities. They created a strategy. The strategy was used by one municipality to argue why they should have allocation of second homes. And actually the national level chose to accept this as an argument, even though it didn't come out of any mandatory processes. So we have a link here between mandatory and non-mandatory, voluntary work and traditional regulatory work. So maybe it's an example of a link here that we could explore further in the future, because surely we will need it. Otherwise, we will have too much governance activity here, too much confusion. Who's doing what, and how is it being coordinated? And in the end, maybe a lot of lost work as well, which is also always the danger in these kind of settings. But we know what we don't want to do. We don't want to get back to rigid systems where it takes a very long time to change the system itself. So it's this adaptive system that we're working towards, where we use the best of both worlds. Yes, what authorities can deliver and what they know, and also what local, both authorities, but also a range of civil society actors and interest organizations can also contribute with. Luuk, you're going to save me from talking now longer here, and help us with some final conclusions. And I might add a bit again, but can you take it from here?
No problem, Carsten. Okay, but I'm not going to conclude going to every direction. And I see in the chat box lots of thoughts and ideas which we have to save somewhere and proceed upon. But nevertheless, I will say something about the three questions about my experience, but try to connect it to what has been said in this roundtable. So first, how to evolve coastal governance and planning in the future? I don't know either, but nevertheless, some 10 or 15 years ago, I have studied. I think that the seas could offer new potentials and opportunities, the new domains of the sea and the Atlantic Oceans. Some 10, 15 years ago, I started with my students and also with a PhD to discover the seas. And in respect of the seas, I said to my students and to my PhD, you can do everything on the sea unless it can be fixed. It is not always there, and unless you could skip it easily. So no concrete on the sea, and that's why I picked on Heather's thing about wind in the sea. No new oil platforms, no new Brent spars, but everything which is easily to adapt. And of course, it was not an easy job to do, but then my students and also the PhD came up with very innovative ideas which you couldn't predict beforehand. And some of those ideas, I think it is still not generic in planning, because where I see all the windmills coming up, it's not about that. It is again a kind of new oil platform thing, but they come up with very new ideas of how to deal with those opportunities of the seas. And some of those ideas are now being implemented. Not all, of course, but some. And of course, then you can ask yourself, when that kind of planning, a planning in a dynamic sea of opportunities, comes to the shore, comes to the coast, where that isn't the case, where there is concrete, where there are bricks, where there are roads, infrastructure, etc., etc. And then, of course, it becomes very demanding. And I think we can think about that in the near future. How to match a dynamic and changing world with a kind of fixed world. And that is, I think, the new opportunities or potentials for tomorrow for the new ideas of land-sea interaction. The second thing, how to better include local communities. And from that perspective of a dynamic sea of opportunities, I've got some problems with the word include, because then you will result somewhere in the middle of the ladder of Einstein, which is still fixed within that frame. So I would say over here, you have to start with those communities, not to include them, but start from the very beginning. What is their interest? What is the stakeholders? Where can we go to? And that's something also what Vincent said during this roundtable, that the public opinion is very much the start from the political will. So if you don't have public opinion, a shared public opinion, what to do, you don't have politics with you. So you have to start with that public opinion. And that is not so much something about what I've heard also in this roundtable about co-production and co-creativity, because then you know what to create or what to produce. And that's why we come more and more to the idea we have to co-evolve, where it is a dynamic thing. So the future changes, the demands changes, especially also on the sea, and therewith also on the coast. So we, at the moment, I've written an article, I think 10 years ago or so, with Bijnske Boonstra to go beyond the letter of Einstein and to go to a kind of co-evolution between several public authorities and communities and stakeholders, etc., etc. And there you come also with the resilience. You can do engineering resilience. There you then you have the Heather Ritchie concrete concrete thing. You can have also ecological resilience. After hazard, you flip to another possibly better situation, or you can have co-evolutionary resilience. And the co-evolutionary resilience is very demanding, is very continuous interplaying in planning, and it is highly complex. So we have to work with that. So how can new governance become then? I think that is more or less going into that co-evolutionary direction, which is of course highly situational, but is nevertheless still based on specific directives. And of course, who takes a lead over here? It is highly important. But I'm very hopeful, which what I've seen during this roundtable, that there's much more opening to go in that direction. And if I hear that Carsten is going to speak with new communities in the coast tomorrow, I hope he will do that in this kind of co-evolutionary sense. And then we are getting somewhere. I must conclude. So if you want to add to this, Carsten, please do.
Yeah, I promise to do that. I think actually in that case we already did, because it's the final workshop we have in that local community there. It's always sort of confirming to each other between authorities, local community actors, and museum representatives, etc., the university as well, that we have done well, that we have actually managed to include quite a bit of knowledge from the local community, and we can see that the policy of the two municipalities have changed. Though they have now changed their approach to local development and planning. So actually, as we speak, they are having a seminar today with a new community where they have built in a more bottom-up oriented approach based on the process that we've just had. So yes, it is possible. But this was, just one project, and I don't think it is groundbreaking. This is more an expression of what is actually going on in many places, I think. So we're just part of, I think, a new mainstream here, that we will be able to find new formats for working together, new governance and planning spaces to help achieve some of the goals here, where that combines not only economic development, but also the social and environmental aspects better, cultural aspects better, and to create some meaningful local communities that can work in the context of the future rather than the past here. So I'll stop myself here, because it feels like I'm drawing on too many of the usual suspects of concepts here. So I want to thank you all for joining us. Thank you to all the presenters for your excellent presentations.